So at this point, you have a license on your controller. This is important. Let's rewind a little bit and reaccess this controller to have a little bit longer look at the interface, because you'll be spending a lot of time on those interfaces. So let's connect back using the default username and password you configured during the initial setup, and let's look again at this initial interface. This is what we call the dashboard. For now, there is no SSID except the one you created during the initial setup. There is no access point because we were just starting. In the upcoming lessons, you'll see that page getting more populated. This dashboard is very nice because it gives you an immediate view of what happens in your network. How many access points, what applications are running, what clients you see, etc. And you can customize the way you access the controller. You can either decide to see the dashboard here, or you can go and change a landing page to go to what we call the advanced menu, which gives you more options, but is a bit more complicated to see. We'll go to that page in a minute. You can also change the data formats of what you see on that dashboard. So you can customize this dashboard the way you want. What is nice also is that this dashboard is not passive. It's actually a collection of links, which makes that whenever you hover over something, you'll be able to get to that something. That is the advanced page where you can also choose to land. If you want to go back to the dashboard, you just click home and you're back there. So you decide which of the two interfaces is best for you to start accessing your controller. It doesn't really matter, really. It's a question of graphical view, because each of these menus you see here on the dashboard can be clicked. And whenever you click those items, it's going to go straight to the advanced equivalent in the standard graphical interface. So the dashboard is a nice way to have a simplified view of what happens in a network, and then whenever you want to go configure something or go in depth into one of these elements, you can just click whatever item is in a dashboard to be able to jump directly to the configuration page in what we call the advanced menu. So the advanced menu is what some people call the traditional menu, because that was the only thing we had before the dashboard was there. And you see a lot of information about your network as well here. It's more a textual view than a graphical view, but the information conveyed is pretty much the same. You can see the access points, you can see the clients, you can see the rogues, and on the left side you have all sorts of information about what's going on around. For example, CDP. You can see what connection I have from that controller to what switch. You can see also the access points, you can see the rogues, etc. Then there is the WLAN menu, and we'll spend some time there next lesson. This is where you configure the SSIDs. Then there is the controller menu. So be careful, because here there is a little bit of confusion between different menus. Controller is about the engine, the controller as an engine. So this is where you're going to configure the mobility group. This is where you're going to configure the interfaces going out of the controller, etc. And there is then the wireless menu, where you're going to configure everything wireless except the SSIDs. That is the channels, powers, RRM, all those items are going to be in wireless. Then there is security, which obviously is about security. You configure here the radiuses, the rogue policies, the access point protection policies. You can replace the certificate on your controller, etc. Then there is management, and this is the one which is a bit confused between controller and management quite often. Management is how you're going to manage the controller, that is to say, how you're going to access it using HTTP, HTTPS, what kind of SNMP traffic you are going to allow, where you're going to put your logs, etc. This is what management is about. So this is different from controller, which is controller as an engine, its IP addresses, etc. So you may find yourself navigating back and forth between these two menus at the beginning, controller and management, but then you'll get used to their logic. This one is an important parameter, management via wireless. What this says is that by default, wireless clients using access points connected by this controller are not allowed to connect to the controller to manage it. In other words, wireless clients are just clients. They're not supposed to be the admin of your box. You need to be a wired client to be allowed to be the admin of the controller. However, in the WC Express setup, that feature is set by default, which means that wireless clients are allowed to HTTPS to the controller management IP address and get in to manage the controller. This is because we understand that if you use the WC Express setup, you probably are in a network where it makes sense that the admin may have wireless access to the controller to manage it as well. But keep that feature in mind. It's set by default. If you don't have any reason to access the controller interface to manage it via wireless, you may have to uncheck that option and click Apply to remove the possibility of managing the controller from wireless. If you keep that possibility though, and that's an exam buzzer question, be careful, there is one thing you cannot do, and that is upload or download files to and from the controller. So if you check that box and you leave it enabled, you can connect HTTPS to the controller, configure it. But if you want to upgrade the code or save the configuration, this is not going to be possible from a wireless interface. And this is logical, right? We're saying we're not going to let you use an interface that your configuration may disable because you're upgrading the code, so the AP is going to reboot. That's a very risky move. You don't want to use something that you're going to cut to manage that controller. So you can configure everything you want, but you cannot upload and you cannot download. But again, if you have a wired connection, you may not have a reason to keep that feature enabled. All right, another very important menu is the tech support. If you have any problem, you have to call tech, they will ask you information from that menu, so keep that one in mind. Then in commands, that's where you add more information about uploading, downloading code, changing the time, etc. Help is also a nice thing. So this is a nice way for you to learn what happens in the controller. So if you have one controller and you have this help button, it's very nice to click it and read about what each of the hundreds of items in the controller does. Of course, this is not something that would replace a configuration guide, right? Because it's not going to give you a step-by-step on what you should do and how you should do it to configure this or that. But if you're browsing the controller interface and you wonder what this menu is, what that command does, this is a great place to go look, because you can type the command, copy and paste it there in the search function, and it's going to pop up a page that tells you what that function does, what it's supposed to be achieving. So it's nice to learn the commands and the interface. And again, don't use it as a configuration guide, because most of the time, configuring one item implies using different fields in different screens to achieve the goal you want. So this is not going to be enough. Then there is this nice feedback button where if you have any problem and if you want to give feedback to Cisco or report an issue, you can click it and tell them what's going on. All right, so that's the general interface, and we'll spend more time in this interface. Another thing which is very important for you to know is the ping button. You can ping from the interface. So you can take any IP address and ping there. Another one which is key is save configuration. So here, be careful. It's very tempting to think that every time you configure something, it's going to be saved. For example, if I click this and click apply, because I clicked apply, I kind of feel that it's saved somewhere. But it's not. It's only in the RAM of the controller. The NVRAM, the startup config, doesn't have this change I just made. So it's very common to have this issue of people calling tech and saying, there was a power shortage yesterday and all my configuration is gone. No, all the configuration is not gone. You never pressed save configuration. So everything has been in RAM for 6 months and it just happened to reboot. So my suggestion is every time you configure something, if you click apply, straight there, click save configuration as well. So not only you apply in RAM, but also you save your configuration in NVRAM. You would avoid clicking save configuration only if you were not sure and you would think that you might be damaging something. But otherwise, always click save config right after clicking apply to make sure that it's a saving configuration. Another item I would like to attract your attention to is the refresh button in the upper right here. You know, this is a web server, so those pages you see are not going to refresh automatically. There is only that page, the monitor page, that is going to refresh by itself every 30 seconds. So if something changes in the network, you will see that in that page. But every other page is a configuration page, so nothing is going to change unless you click refresh or you refresh your screen from the browser bar. Because if you wait here, you can wait for years and you may have access points and you will not see them until you refresh the page. So keep that in mind. It's a static web page outside of the monitor page. So you need refresh or you need the browser address bar to make sure that you refresh the information that is being displayed if you think that something has been changing that you should be aware of. So this is 2504. It supports 75 access points. The fact that it shows 75 here doesn't mean that you have 75 on there, right? It's a license level for that controller. Then you may have 1 or maybe 0 access points or maybe 75. It's the max number of access points that are supported. Once your access points join, you can see them by clicking wireless, and here you have the list of access points effectively connected to your controller with their name, IP address, model, etc. There's also something I would like to attract your attention to. The 2504 is a small controller for SMB, so it has almost all the same functions as the other controllers. However, there are a couple of tiny differences between the 2504 and the larger models like the 5508, for example. Let's take an example to show you. Let me go to QoS profile on this controller. So here you see two options. There is something called WQoS parameters and WireQoS protocol. What they do is not really important. That's advanced QoS function. What matters is that you see those options. And then on the right, I have a 5508 and it's set on the same page. And you see, I have the same options, but I also have some other options at the top. So don't be surprised if you see some options that are available in documentation that you do not see in your 2504, or if, as we go through this course, we mention some items or show you some pages on the 2504, and on the 5508 you may own, you see a different display. It's normal. It's because the 2504 is designed for smaller networks where maybe not all functions are necessary, functions that are implemented in the larger controllers. So you may see some differences, and that's okay. There are also some differences based on the code. So if you do not run code 8.0, you may see some items that are not in code 8.0 and vice versa. Okay, so all this is on the AeroS platform. We said that the 5760 could also be included in the same controller centralized type of logic, and it can. And this is how a 5760 looks like. And you see, the look and feel is kind of different, and this is why I want to treat it with the iOS XE tools. However, if you navigate those menus at the top, monitor, configuration, administration, you'll find the same type of items as on the AeroS controllers, but they are simply set in different locations, and sometimes the naming convention is slightly different. So it's better to treat the 5760 along with the iOS XE controllers. But keep in mind that what we'll be doing on the AeroS is identical to what you could do on the 5760, just the menus might be slightly different.